They dragged him across the marble floor like he was nothing, like the years he had spent quietly polishing those same tiles meant less than the dirt on their boots. And in that violent moment when the crowd turned away and the echo of his shoes scraping against the ground filled the grand hall, no one noticed the small girl in the corner whose face went pale as she recognized the man being taken from her sight. Before this story pulls you deeper, take a second to like this video, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the soul, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. The janitor's name was Daniel Harris, a man most people in the building barely saw, even though he had been there longer than the flags hanging from the ceiling and the portraits lining the walls. Every morning before sunrise, Daniel arrived with his worn backpack and quiet determination, cleaning offices that housed power, rank, and authority he would never possess. He had learned long ago how to move silently, how to exist without disturbing important people, how to swallow pride so deeply that even hunger felt familiar. His hands were rough, his back permanently bent, and his eyes carried the tired kindness of someone who had lost much and still chosen not to become bitter. The building itself was a military headquarters, guarded by steel gates and stricter rules, a place where mistakes were not forgiven and appearances mattered more than explanations. Daniel knew this better than anyone. He had lost his previous job years ago when his wife fell ill and hospital bills piled up faster than his paychecks. After her passing, he had been left with memories, debts, and a promise to himself to stay honest no matter how hard life became. This janitor job was not glamorous, but it kept him afloat, and more importantly, it kept him close to a world where discipline and order reminded him that chaos did not have to win. What no one knew, or perhaps no one cared to know, was that Daniel carried a secret heavier than his cleaning cut. Years ago, before life had stripped him of everything, he had served in the military himself. An injury during a classified rescue mission had ended his career abruptly, leaving him with a limb and a commendation that never made it into public records. He never spoke about it, because medals did not pay rent, and memories did not bring back the fallen. He chose silence, the same way he chose humility, and he wore his janitor uniform with the same respect he once wore his service uniform. On the day everything changed, the building buzzed with tension. A high-ranking general was visiting, and security was on edge. Every corner was inspected, every worker scrutinized, and every unfamiliar movement treated like a threat. Daniel had been assigned to clean a restricted hallway earlier than usual, and though he followed his supervisor's instructions, the timing worked against him. As he wiped down a glass display case containing medals and historical artifacts, an alarm suddenly sounded. It was brief but sharp, enough to freeze the air and send guards rushing in every direction. Security officers spotted Daniel first. A janitor in a restricted area during a high-level visit was all the justification they needed. Before he could even understand what was happening, hands grabbed his arms, voices rose, and his cart tipped over, spilling cleaning supplies across the pristine floor. Daniel tried to explain, tried to show his work order, but explanations meant nothing when fear and authority took over. The crowd that gathered watched in uncomfortable silence, some with curiosity, others with judgment, and many with indifference. As Daniel was dragged away, his heart pounded not with anger but with a familiar helplessness. He had felt this before, the feeling of being powerless in a system that did not pause to listen. He worried about losing his job, about missing rent, about how easily a life could unravel because of one misunderstanding. His limb worsened as he struggled to keep his balance, and his eyes searched the room not for rescue, but for dignity, hoping someone might at least see him as human. That was when everything stopped. From the far end of the hall, a young girl's cry cut through the tension like a blade through silence. She was no older than 8, dressed neatly, her small hands trembling as tears streamed down her face. She broke free from the 8 beside her and ran forward, her voice shaking as she cried out Daniel's name with a desperation that stunned everyone present. The general himself turned, confusion flashing across his stern face as he saw his daughter rushing toward the janitor being restrained by security. The girl reached Daniel and clung to his leg, sobbing uncontrollably, her small body shaking as if the world was ending before her eyes. She refused to let go, crying harder, pointing at the guards, begging them to stop. The hall fell into a stunned silence as eyes shifted from the janitor to the child, then to the general, whose expression slowly transformed from authority to disbelief. He demanded an explanation, and his voice carried a weight that immediately loosened the grip of security. What followed unraveled years of quiet truth. The general's daughter had met Daniel months earlier during one of her visits to the building. She had been lonely, overwhelmed by the pressure of growing up under constant expectations, and Daniel, with his gentle patience, had been the only one who listened. He had helped her with her school bag when it broke, comforted her when she cried after overhearing adults argue, and shared stories about resilience without ever revealing his own pain. To her, he was not a janitor. He was safety. He was kindness. He was the person who treated her like a human being, not a title. As the general listened, pieces of the past clicked into place. He remembered a mission long ago, a rescue that saved lives at the cost of one soldier's career. He remembered a name that never made headlines. He looked at Daniel more closely, noticing the familiar eyes, the posture shaped by discipline, the limb that told a story words never could. The truth hit him like a wave of guilt and realization. This man had once served under his command. This man had been forgotten. The general ordered everyone to step back. He approached Daniel not as a superior, but as someone facing a long overdue reckoning. The crowd watched as authority softened into respect. Security lowered their eyes. Whispers spread through the hall as the janitor who had been dragged away moments earlier now stood protected by the most powerful person in the room. Daniel did not ask for recognition. He did not demand justice. He only cared that the child was safe and no longer crying. When the general finally spoke to him, it was with gratitude and regret, acknowledging the debt that could never truly be repaid. In that moment, the building felt different, as if the walls themselves were listening, learning that dignity does not come from rank, but from character. The aftermath changed everything. Daniel was cleared of any wrongdoing immediately. His past service was officially recognized, not with empty words, but with action. He was offered a role that honored his experience, one that allowed him to mentor young recruits and support families, including children like the general's daughter, who needed quiet strength more than loud authority. The janitor's uniform was replaced, but Daniel remained the same man, humble, grateful, and deeply aware of how close he had come to losing everything again. For the general's daughter, the incident became a lesson she would carry forever, that heroes do not always wear uniforms or give orders, and that sometimes the bravest people are the ones who clean up after others without expecting thanks. For the crowd who witnessed it, the memory lingered like a reminder they could not shake, a reminder that kindness often hides in plain sight. As this story draws close, if this moment of humanity, recognition, and second chances touch your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can be told. And before the ending, we have one special request for you. Comment the word kindness below if you believe every person deserves to be seen, no matter their position. Because sometimes it takes a child's tears to remind the world that respect should never be based on a uniform, a title, or a job, but on the quiet choices people make when no one is watching, and sometimes the ones we overlook are the very ones holding us together all along.